You know that can of coconut milk sitting in your pantry? The one you grab for a curry or a smoothie? Yeah, it seems pretty simple, doesn't it? But believe it or not, behind that humble can is this huge, booming global story. We're talking consumer trends, super high tech factories, even sound waves. Seriously. So, let's get into it. Okay, let's just start with a number, shall we? We're talking about a massive global business here. By 2032, the coconut milk market is expected to be worth over $7.2 billion. dollars. And honestly, the story of how it got to be that big, it's even more surprising. But it's not just the size, it's the speed. We're seeing this market grow by more than 12% every single year. Now, that's not a slow simmer. That is a full-on rolling boil. And you have to ask, what's driving all this? Well, there are some really powerful forces at play. All right, so to really get a handle on this explosion in popularity, we've got to zoom in on one single drink. Just one beverage that pretty much acted as the catalyst and completely changed the game for coconut milk, on a global scale. Okay, so this is it. This is the turning point. Back in 2021, the Chinese coffee chain, Luckin Coffee, they launched a coconut latte. And it wasn't just a hit, it was an absolute phenomenon. We're talking 100 million cups sold in its first year alone. 100 million. That one drink basically created a tidal wave of demand and just threw coconut milk into the spotlight like never before. And, the genius of it all was how simple it was. This wasn't just about being trendy. They were actually solving a real problem. Luckin's senior vice president, Zhou Wei-ming, explained that they used the coconut milk to, and I'm quoting here, dilute the bitter taste of coffee, which, as it turns out, a lot of Chinese consumers just weren't fans of. So simple, right? It was this perfect mix of a familiar flavor with a modern twist. So that latte was definitely the spark, but you could say the fire was just waiting to be lit. I mean, think about it. You've got the massive rise of plant-based and vegan diets, creating this huge demand for dairy alternatives. Then layer on top of that the fact that something like 65% of adults worldwide are lactose intolerant to some degree. Plus, everyone's talking about the health benefits, and of course, the global love for Asian food. It was basically the perfect storm for a coconut boom. So, okay, demand is just soaring, but how do you actually get the milk from millions and millions of coconuts into all those cans on the shelf? Well, let's take a look at the factory floor because the industrial process behind this is pretty incredible. It all starts, as you'd expect, by cracking open the shells and scooping out all that white coconut meat. Then that meat gets shredded into tiny pieces and fed into these enormous hydraulic presses. And I mean enormous. They apply hundreds of tons of pressure to squeeze out every single last drop of that creamy liquid. After it's filtered, it goes through two really crucial steps: homogenization and pasteurization. And then, finally, robotic arms take over, filling and sealing thousands of cans every single hour. Okay, so you know how sometimes you open a can of coconut milk and it's separated? You've got that thick cream on top and the watery part on the bottom? Well, the process that stops that from happening is called homogenization. It's actually pretty clever. They force the milk at super high pressure through these tiny, tiny openings. This just shatters the fat molecules, breaking them down so they stay evenly mixed in. And that's what gives canned coconut milk that perfectly smooth, consistent texture and its long shelf life. So this whole process is already ridiculously efficient, right? But of course, science is always pushing things even further. And now, you're not going to believe this, researchers are using sound waves to make coconut milk even safer, more stable, and, get this, more sustainable. See, when you're making stuff like virgin coconut oil, you're left with this byproduct. It's called skim coconut milk. It's actually really great stuff, high in protein, low in fat. But here's the catch. Preserving it has always been a huge challenge, especially for smaller producers. Well, that is until now. Okay, this is where it gets really cool. So you've got your traditional pasteurization, right? You just heat the milk up to kill the bacteria. It works, sure, but man, it uses a ton of energy. But now, check out this new method that came out of a study in Indonesia, ultrasonic pasteurization. It uses high-frequency sound waves with lower heat. What happens is the sound waves create these teeny tiny bubbles that then collapse violently. And that process is what actually kills the microbes. It's just way more effective and way more efficient. And the results? They're pretty staggering. For every single microbial cell it gets rid of, this ultrasonic method uses 3 times less energy than the old way of just heating it. I mean, that is a total game changer for sustainability. And it could finally make this kind of high-quality processing a real option for smaller companies and even individual farmers. Now, this kind of innovation becomes even more critical when we zoom out and look at the big picture, at the national level. Because for a country like Indonesia, which is a global powerhouse when it comes to coconuts, this whole booming market is both a massive, massive opportunity and a really serious challenge. I mean, just look at the global market. The Asia-Pacific region absolutely dominates, holding nearly 60% of the entire market share. It makes sense, right? This is where the coconuts are grown, it's home to the biggest producers, and it represents just an immense potential for economic growth. But this is where you see the paradox, especially for a key player like Indonesia. On the one hand, they're the world's second largest producer. They have huge areas of plantations. But on the other hand, they're facing some really critical challenges. Their productivity is low. They've got hundreds of thousands of hectares of trees that are just old and need replacing. And crucially, they don't have enough facilities to do that value-added processing. So what does that mean? It means they're producing tons of raw coconuts, but they're missing out on the much bigger profits you get from turning them into premium products, like coconut milk. So when you think about it, we've seen how one single coffee drink can kickstart a global trend, and how something as wild as sound waves can completely revolutionize a factory. The journey of that simple can of coconut milk, it just shows you how everything is connected. Consumer taste, technology, global economics, it's all in there. Which leaves us with one final big question to chew on.